Hi, my name is Janice, and I am the director here at the Everglades Youth Conservation Camp. This facility is owned and operated by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Today we're going to do a program called Bird's Eye View, but before we get started, I'm going to introduce my staff to you.
Hi, I'm Devin, and I'm the assistant director.
Hi, I'm Lindsay, and I work here as part of the educational team.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm on the education team.
All right, well, let's start off the program by first talking to you a little review of the ecosystems that we have here in our backyard. So one of them is our hardwood hammock. So a hardwood hammock is usually a group of oak trees and other dense forested trees, or harder woods, that can create a closed canopy. They are excellent for being able to hide in. They produce a lot of berries and nuts. But because it's such a closed canopy, there's not going to be a lot on the forest floor in the hardwood hammock.
All right, so below the hardwood hammock here, we have the cypress swamp. The main plant that you're going to find in the cypress swamp is the cypress tree, as you can see right here. Cypress trees are adapted to be in areas which have higher water. So you'll notice that you actually have the roots of the cypress tree here sticking up out of the water. Now, because the cypress swamp is such a wet environment, you don't find too many other types of plants other than cypress trees. However, because cypress trees shed their needles during the winter time, that allows more sunlight through, and in some areas the water may dry up. So you might see different plants like ferns, and maybe on the edges of cypress swamps where you're transitioning into higher ground, you'll see cabbage palms and other types of shrubs.
So right below the cypress swamp, we do have the marsh, and the marsh is wet for most of or the entire year, which is a great water source for animals. The primary plant you're going to find in the marsh is grasses.
So below the marsh, we have the pine flatwoods. The primary tree you're going to find here is the slash pine. They're usually pretty spaced out, so you have a pretty wide open canopy, which allows a lot of shrubs and like grasses to grow, which leads to having a lot of food for different animals.
So with our bird's eye view activity, what we want to do is talk a little bit about how plants survive in these different ecosystems. So we know all animals have specific adaptations, which is the structures or their behaviors that allow them to find the things they need in their habitat: food, water, shelter, and the space they've got given. So when we talk about adaptations, we're looking at the different types of feet that birds may have. So this just shows you some of the different ways that help animals to be able to move or capture their food while they're in their habitat. We also have a variety of beak structures on our birds that allow them, again, to be able to find their food in the habitat that they're living in. So these are what we call adaptations. When you're also talking about the coloration of their feathers, how long their legs are, those are all adaptations as well. So what we're going to do now is my staff is going to share with you some of the birds that may live specifically in a habitat in order for them to be able to survive.
My grouping of birds that I have are songbirds.
You may go ahead and spread them out.
Okay, so typically you're going to find songbirds in the hardwood hammock or even the pine flatwood. So I'll put a few of them over here. Now, songbirds, I think, prefer the hardwood hammock because it's a lot more dense, because larger birds of prey do prey upon songbirds. Because it's dense in here, it's harder for different birds like hawks to get in. They also like to be in here because the hardwood hammock has acorns, because there's oak trees. So there's nuts that they can feed on there. I specifically have seen our blue jays in the hardwood hammocks using their strong beak to kind of crack open and break acorns into smaller pieces. We also have other songbirds that like to be in the pine flatwood because, as Max said, the pine flatwood has a lot of shrubs. So there's a lot of seeding plants as well as plants that have berries, which they love. Here we have our cardinal, which I think everybody's pretty familiar with. Something interesting about cardinals is that the males are very brightly colored, while the females are more of a dull color, and that's so that they can be better camouflaged as they are sitting on their nest, so they're more concealed from predators.
So the family that I have is the duck family, and the duck family you'll mostly find is in the marsh, but there can be a couple in the cypress swamp as well. One of the adaptations to the duck, which makes them helpful to live in these very wet environments, is their webbed feet. Their webbed feet helps them to move through water much faster, and their beaks also help them to find food as well.
So I have here wading birds and birds of prey. First, we're going to talk about the wading birds. So the wading birds are primarily going to be found in the marsh and in wet areas. Some of their adaptations include having very long legs. They have toes that are spread out, and they've got 3 main toes and then 1 toe in the back that kind of helps stay on top, keep them from sinking in. The great blue heron uses its beak to spear fish. So it's long and pointy, and they use it to spear the fish, and then they'll toss it up in the air and catch it. Then we have the birds of prey, and those are mostly going to be found in the pine flatwoods because it's got a more open canopy, so it's easier for them to fly around and hunt. There's also a lot of small animals in there, such as mice and other little rodents that they primarily feed on.
So now, Devin and the crew are going to go on a little hike with you to find some birds with their different behaviors. We like to go on a bird behavior hike rather than on an identification hike because it's so much more interesting to kind of find out what birds are doing and why. So that's a really great reason to kind of look at them and their adaptations through their behaviors.
Okay, everybody, it is now time for us to go on our bird behavior scavenger hunt. First, I want to go over the tools I will be bringing with me. The number one thing that any bird watcher is going to have is binoculars. When observing the behaviors of animals, it's very important that you keep your distance and that you do your best not to be spotted. This way you are ensured that the animal is doing their natural behaviors. So binoculars are pretty simple to use. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to spot the animal with your eyes. So pretending that maybe the camera, for example, will be my animal. So I've spotted the camera with my eyes. The next thing I want to do is bring the binoculars up to my face. Okay, and then once I have the animal in the sights of the binoculars, you want to adjust so that they are in focus. Now you see I'm moving my fingers on the top. That's because there is not so much a button, but there is this dial here. I'll bring it closer to you. That you twist back and forth, and that's what helps you to focus your binoculars. Okay, so I'm going to focus on you. Okay, so I've got you guys focused already. Another thing that might help is your binoculars are also, see how they open and close like this? Depending on how your eyes are spaced, you may need to open and close your binoculars so that you have one picture rather than two separate lenses showing. There you go. So that is how you use binoculars. So the next thing you're going to have is your bird behavior scavenger hunt sheet. You can get this in the description of the video. It has a list of different bird behaviors. As you can see, I've already crossed some off on previous hikes. So what you do is when you're walking around and you see a specific behavior, you go ahead and cross it off. All right, guys, let's get started.
All right, so that was pretty cool. Little afternoon bird watching. You don't typically see sandhill cranes in the marsh. Those were those tall birds with the tan bodies and the red heads. They actually like to eat bugs. But there they were. Just because you don't typically see an animal somewhere doesn't mean you won't. Also out there, once again, were some tricolored herons. Cool. The one guy you saw, it was kind of hard to see, but he was putting out his wings while he was hunting, which I thought was kind of cool. I've seen that happen before. I don't know what the benefit is for them to do that. I haven't seen all tricolors do that. Some of them just kind of do a quick little run and zigzag, and then they'll boom, grab their prey. Find out here. So far a very productive afternoon. I'm gonna get up early tomorrow morning in hopes of getting more footage of smaller birds that you might find in the pine flatwood. There's this really cool little brown bird that I've seen, and I don't know what it is, so I'm hoping to get it on camera and identify it for you guys. It also has a very distinctive call, so it's very loud, but hopefully I get it on camera, and hopefully I get up early enough. Of course I will. I'll do it for you guys. So not a morning person, but we're gonna do it. But all right, yeah. So I guess till tomorrow morning. All right, just checking in. Not the most successful morning. I am spotting birds. It's just a matter of getting them on camera, which is the hard part. Normally, when you go bird watching, you sit at a distance and you might sit at certain spots for a period of time, just to let it get quiet and allow the birds to come back out again. There's a couple more places I want to try. No luck on finding the brown bird yet. I can hear his call. It sounds like he's saying, I'm right here, I'm right here. But yeah, no luck in there. So I'm going to try going down one of these trails here in the pine flatwood, and then I'm actually going to try the Hungryland trail to see if there's any luck there. All right, guys, here we go. All right, so we are officially at the trailhead of the Pine Flatwoods, and I wanted to address something really quick before we go out there. So the Pine Flatwoods that I was in back at camp weren't really a true Pine Flatwoods. Normally, Pine Flatwoods don't have shrubs, which are bushes basically growing up so tall, and that's because they're so dry that in Florida especially, lightning strikes down and causes fires to burn. So pine flatwoods are typically maintained by fire, meaning all that shrubbery and stuff would be burned down. So typically in a pine flatwood you would see mainly pine trees, and then grasses. So you would see a very open area, not so many shrubs growing up high. But because Florida is more highly populated, there are certain pine flatwoods which we make sure are not maintained by fire. Biologists actually do what we call controlled burns to maintain natural areas. So they will actually set fire to it on purpose, but in a controlled setting where they can control specifically what areas get burned in order to maintain a healthy ecosystem. All right, so we're in for a treat because the pine flatwood we're about to walk into has recently gone through a controlled burn. I haven't been there in a few months. The last time I saw it, there was a lot of, there wasn't a lot of growth on the ground yet. So we're gonna hopefully see it in that transitional phase, hopefully with a lot less shrubbery and more grasses. But the first part I'll walk through, they actually didn't burn. So it'll be on the second part that we get through, and I'll let you guys know. All right, let's see if we have any luck. Hear his call. Here is what a pine flatwood looks like when it has had a controlled burn. So as you can see, those big bushes are not here anymore. We have a lot of grasses and flowers, and we have some sprouts of saw palmettos, which is these plants right here. So these guys will grow up kind of taller. There's a lot of benefits to a controlled burn. It releases a lot of nutrients into the soil, creates more space for animals to move about. It also, for some plants, it helps them their seeds to germinate or to start growing because their seed growing process is activated by fire. As you notice, there's a metal band on some of the trees, and that's because in this area we have what is called the red cockaded woodpecker. It's a protected species. There will be like a colony of them, and the entire colony will care for one set of offspring. So due to habitat loss and some other factors, their species is now threatened. There's actually a nest. Let me zoom out here, sorry guys. I think it's up this tree. So you can see the trees are charred, but that's okay. Oh, the sun's gonna stop us. Yeah, the sun's gonna stop us. So the nest is actually up there. So they only nest in live pine trees. Can't see it well. So red cockaded woodpeckers only nest in live pine trees. And the sap that surrounds the nest from them kind of burrowing in there actually protects the nest from predators getting in. All right, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up our bird behavior hike. I think that was really successful. So now you guys can download the document that we have, and you guys can go on your own bird behavior hike. Now remember, bring your binoculars, and also remember you want to spot them at a distance. And sometimes the best strategy is to just listen for the different calls. You can actually just identify birds through that way. One great resource that you guys can use to later on, like once you've heard a call, maybe you can record it, is to go on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and you can look up any bird species on there, and it'll show a picture of the bird and the type of call. So thank you guys for joining me on my hike today, and good luck on yours.